My name is Leela North. Most people at Trail Pay know me as the coffee lady. At 2 p.m. today, I sit at the head of the board. SOMA, San Francisco, Series B party. Glass and cameras everywhere. I pour coffee. I move like air. No one sees the air until it stops. Sabrina Cole, head of brand, snaps. Stand behind the flowers. Lower grade staff shouldn't be in premium shots. I smile, step back, and open my phone. Audit flags, luxury client gifts shipped to Sabrina's condo. Consulting fees to AR Ventures tied to CEO Evan Hart's P.O. box. A commit in coreledger.ts where intern Tess Brooks's name quietly disappears. Numbers don't shout. They whisper until you put a microphone next to them. 12:10 p.m. Harbor Light Trust calls an emergency board session. 2 p.m. Doors close, cameras roll. By sunset, a CEO resigns, a brand head apologizes, and an intern's name returns to the record forever. People say I'm invisible. They're right. Until I choose not to be. Bring your eyes to the front of the room. Watch you sit swear, and why. I'll pour one more cup and take my seat. The night our company celebrated its Series B, I poured coffee in a reception hall in SOMA, San Francisco, a place that looked like a chandelier had fallen into a glass box. LED walls looped glossy demos of our app as if they were constellations. Our logo, Trail Pay, floated over everyone's faces like a brand new moon. I wore a plain white button-down, black slacks, and flats that had done more honest miles than any luxury heel in the room. A stainless airpot nudged my hip. A tray of cups rode my left arm. When I moved, people parted. They didn't see me, only the coffee, the hands holding it, the shape of catering moving along the edges of their important night. "Ma'am, not there, please." The voice didn't need a mic to land. Sabrina Cole, head of brand, tilted her face at me like I'd scuffed a floor she personally polished. The black dress, the perfect blowout, the practice smile that costs money to maintain. She had it all. She pointed toward the stage where a clutch of engineers huddled around their phones like kids watching fireworks. "Don't stand in frame. We have press tonight." "I'm just refilling the urn," I said to the air. People like Sabrina respond to posture more than words. I moved before she could decide if she was offended. "You see," she told her cluster, not bothering to lower her voice, "we are the brand. Control the light, control the sound, control who gets seen and when. If we don't, then narrative slips." A few laughed. A few looked at me, then looked away with that quick shame of people who've already chosen a side and don't want to be seen choosing. Behind them, the LED wall pulsed our slogan, frictionless, everywhere. For a second, the letters washed my wrist like a promise I'd written years ago. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I keep a small device even when I pour coffee. You never know when a lock skicks or a name drops off a list. I glanced down. 3:30 p.m., board call goes live. Link in calendar. Harbor Light Trust. That's a quiet line only 3 people use. I lock the screen. At the door, Art Jenkins, our security lead with kind hands, pretended to adjust the stanchion and drifted closer. "Ma'am," he murmured, "just a word, just a warning." "I know," I said softly. "Thank you." He nodded the way men nod when they aren't sure what they know, but know enough to nod. Across the room, interns waved for coffee. I crossed over. Tess Brooks sat at the end of their table, hair in a no-nonsense ponytail. She had been writing code late nights for months on a small team that didn't know it was building the spine people would fight to control. "Coffee?" I asked, the way I always do. The tone that says yes before they do. Tess hesitated and scooted a space for me. "I'll carry it, Miss..." "It's all right," I said, in the voice we use in busy kitchens.
You drink. Your day is heavy." "How do you always know?" she asked, half smiling. "Because important days make people forget water." The table laughed. Tess sat a little straighter. Sabrina swept past then, a gust of perfume and impatience. "Interns, tuck your lanyards. We don't want too much clutter in the camera." She glanced at my shoes, plain leather worn at the heel, and lifted an eyebrow. "And you, if you have to be near the stage, please stand behind the floral partition. This is a premium event. Better if the lower grade staff isn't in the main shots." A rustle moved the air, like someone changing shirts in a hurry. Tess inhaled sharply. I set the air pot down and smiled the way you smile when you write something on water. "Of course," I said, and moved. When you're 58 and the room thinks you're the coffee lady, there are many ways to step back without kneeling. I stood near the partition because I wanted to hear everything. The speeches began. Our CEO, Evan Hart, took the stage wearing pride like a tailored jacket. "Tonight," Evan said, raising a glass, "we step into the class we were born to define. This city will switch to trail pay like it switched to running water, and the reason is in this room." Applause. My phone buzzed again. The link to the board call pulsed. 3:30 p.m. I slipped the phone away and lifted the AirPod. Later, I think about Evan's word class, how sometimes people say it when they mean money, sometimes when they mean gate, sometimes when they mean ladder. The older I get, the more I think class is how you behave when you're sure you can get away with behaving badly. After the speeches, the cameras roamed, PR rearranged people like furniture. Investors stood in front of good light and formed smiles that work across platforms. A reporter asked Evan about our onboarding flow. "Frictionless," he said, and the reporter nodded like the word had been imported. Sabrina hovered near the stage, hands on hips, calling, "Look alive, no fatigue in a funding story. Tired is for recessions. We're in growth."
Then she turned to me. "Truly, do you not have other shoes? Those look like they came from a clearance bin." The junior associates laughed, the way laughter blooms wherever power waters it. I might have let it pass the way I've let the first, the second, the 100th pass, but she added, bright as glass. You understand, right? Brand image. In photos, poor shoes read like poor choices. Tess's knuckles went white around her cup. Her mentor, Frank Adler, sent me that small, helpless apology people carry and rarely spend. I nodded as if Sabrina had given me a note I'd needed all my life. "I understand," I said. When the night thinned and napkins curled at the plate edges, I slipped out to the loading dock. The air smelled like damp concrete and rain that couldn't decide. I sat on an upturned crate and opened my phone. I keep a separate device for certain things. It looks like a phone. It's more a key. I opened the secure folder I reserve for reports that never travel by inbox. The CFO's quarterly audit flagged board eyes only. Numbers aren't dramatic by nature. That's why people ignore them until it's too late. They sit very still and tell the truth. I scrolled, corporate card client gifting that matched the price point of handbags I'd seen on Sabrina's arm, consulting fees to a company with the extremely imaginative name AR Ventures LLC, whose bank address matched Evan's private P.O. box, reimbursements for executive experience enhancements that read like a travel blog allergic to economy class. In the repo logs, the author line on coreledger.ts had changed 2 hours after a successful build. Tess Brooks had been replaced with E. Hart, the timestamp glowing like a bruise. And HR's report queue notes no one reads unless they must. 3 culture concerns in 30 days. 2 named Sabrina, 1 flagged a credit removal after a merge. No names. I didn't need them. I closed the folder, put the phone away, and watched a little garden lizard flick under the dock light. I laughed, small, surprised, because I hadn't done it all evening. Laughing is easy when you know exactly where you're standing. When my husband was alive, he used to tell me, "You have the patience of water. You'll take the shape of any cup. Then, when it's time, you'll carve a canyon." He died 2 years ago. The first year was winter that wouldn't leave. The second year, I remembered the shape of my hands. In the morning, I woke before the city picked a mood and made coffee in my small kitchen. The maple outside the window was full of sparrows practicing gossip. I told the kettle to behave. I told my heartbeat to keep its promises. I ironed a white blouse and a beige blouse and then another blouse because sometimes you don't iron for the day, you iron so decisions hold their form. At 11, I called the COO. "You will receive an email with attachments at noon. Please reply with a single word, received." "At noon?" she asked, careful. "Yes." "May I ask?" "Not yet." Understood. At 12, the email went. At 12:02, the reply arrived, received. At 12:10, the Harbor Light Trust sent a notice of emergency board session to all directors and the CEO under Section 6.2 of the Shareholders Agreement. 2 p.m. Location, main conference room, Trail Pay HQ. Materials on site, recording enabled. I dressed the way I always do when I plan to cause a quiet earthquake. Clean lines, nothing flashy, clothes that pass in any room and leave the room standing. I pinned my hair in a coil. I wore those same black flats because I didn't plan to run. At the ground floor, Art nodded me through with a small dip of his head that said, "I saw everything and I will see again." The elevator's mirror doubled me into a woman I recognized. The conference room smelled like lemon cleaner and old ambition. The long walnut table gleamed. At the far end sat a leather chair, the one reserved for the board chair. People like to pretend the chair matters more than the person. That's true only if the person is hollow. Evan arrived first among the execs, early, like men who know showing up buys a narrative about dedication. He clapped the CFO's shoulder. "We'll get through this," he said lightly. To PR, probably a routine audit quirk. The trust wants reassurance from the horse's mouth. Sabrina swept in behind him, perfume first, eyes restless. She looked at me near the sideboard and half smiled like, "Imagine being called into a room like this." I smiled back like, "Imagine the rooms I've been in." The COO arrived last, breath a bit short, eyes careful like someone balancing a tray with too many glasses. Directors filtered in and the room's temperature changed. Investors carry weather systems. 2 had flown in that morning, their sleeves still creased. 1 sat in a video rectangle, impatience in 1080p. "Shall we?" Evan said, cheerful, sliding the end chair halfway out. "Not yet," I said. He looked up, irritated at an interruption he couldn't place. He said, "We'll begin with a quick overview, ma'am. We can bring coffee later." "Please allow me," I said, and crossed to the head of the table. I took the empty chair. The silence felt like a dropped phone no one wanted to claim. The COO straightened. The CFO closed his laptop, then opened it again, buying time. PR studied a non-existent email. Sabrina blinked twice and glanced at Evan as if he could explain new physics. "Good afternoon," I said in the voice my husband used in court, polite, unhurried, inexorable. "My name is Leela North. I serve as a trustee for the Harbor Light Trust. As of last month, Harbor Light holds 52% of Trail Pay. Under Section 6.2, I've called this meeting." No one reached for water. No one breathed loudly. Evan laughed. Easy. He said, "That's very good. Theatrical.
But our agenda and the trust's representative is present. Welcome. We'll be brief. We'll be clear. We'll be decent. Evan's smile sat there without a pilot. He tried perhaps a quick sidebar, moving half a step. No, I said. Sidebars are for when we're not sure of our facts. Today, everything stays in the center of the table. I nodded to the CFO. Please connect the deck. He plugged in with the relief of a man asked to open a door he knows well. The first slide appeared. A simple title, 3 lines. Expenses flagged, Q1, Q2. Attribution anomalies, source control. HR climate, escalation potential. Numbers, I said, are loud only when they're time bombs. Otherwise, they whisper. Let's listen.
The expense block rolled up. Client gifting, luxury category, $48,900. Vendor list, boutiques with nothing to do with our customers. Recipient, S. Cole. End of month sloppiness had done the rest. Oh, that, Sabrina said lightly, palm on sternum like a logo. Influencer seeding. We aggregate purchases for better pricing. Everyone does it. Aggregated to your home address, weekend deliveries, signed by your cousin. You're very helpful to the Postal Service. She blinked. Okay, some shipping confusion, but we'll revisit, I said, moving on. Next block, consulting fees. AR Ventures LLC, $312,000. I let the number sit. People who respect numbers give them a chair and a glass of water and then talk less. Strategic advice, Evans said promptly. We needed off-book think time to refine positioning. Your private P.O. box appears as both beneficiary and return address on 3 transfers, I said. AR Ventures board includes your college roommate who also receives marketing consultancy from TrailPay. Your ethics declaration omitted both. That style was fashionable a few scandals ago. We're early. Evan said, governance catches up. Investors like speed. Investors like returns, one director said dryly. Speed is interesting only when it arrives where it should. The source control law came up. I magnified the line where core.ledger.ts changed hands. The author field hiccuped exactly where I expected. I overlaid the daily commit graph, circled the times Tess's bill passed Tess, and the hour Evan's credentials touched the file later, like a signature tiptoeing onto a painting after it dried. An intern doesn't need credit, Evans said gently, as if explaining why rain is wet. What matters is we ship. Tess, I said, walk us through your branch. She looked small at the far end and then decided not to be. She laced her fingers, set them down, and spoke clearly enough for the ceiling mic. I wrote a new reconciliation function. We had rounding errors at the 100th decimal in cross-border conversions. I recreated the logic in isolation, patched a precision mismatch causing rare drift, pushed at 11:47 a.m., Tess passed at 12:02 p.m., Frank reviewed, we merged at 12:16 with credit. At 2:25 p.m., the author field changed with no code changes and a new tag appeared with a different signature. I flagged it. My mentor said, brand call. I didn't know what that meant. Brand call? Exactly. It's signaling. The market trusts leadership. The market also trusts truth, I said. Policies rely on decency. Decency cannot be outsourced. Evan's face didn't change much, but the skin at the eyes pulled like curtains tugged too hard. No one is diminishing anyone. We're aligning perception. I take the failures, I take the credit. That's leadership. Sometimes. Other times, leadership is a light that makes sure it shines in the right place. HR roles rolled. Anonymized, but patterns don't need names. Premium-facing staff. Doesn't match brand look. Keep certain categories off stage. Small offenses stack into walls when you stop counting. In this company, I said, you will not build a caste system with lanyards and lighting. You will not separate builders from the people who serve them coffee. You will not decide who belongs in a frame based on the price of their shoes. No one moved. PR cleared their throat, the sound of someone stepping back onto firm ground after mud. Evan tried another angle. Lila, right? What is your role? We've never... I pour coffee in your halls, I said. I listen. I watch. I've been a Harbor Light trustee for 5 years. Our shares are held on behalf of commitments larger than anyone's title. My husband and I believed money is safest when it doesn't sit in one person's pocket. He died 2 years ago. I've never felt the need to be dramatic about existing. Sabrina stood, bumped the table, sat again. If we'd known who you were, you would have held a door with flourish, I said. Your language about people you believe didn't matter would have stayed the same. What you didn't know is the point. I slid 3 printed resolutions down the table. Paper demands attention, screens don't. CEO resignation for cause, undisclosed conflicts, misappropriation, and attribution manipulation, termination of head of brand, repeated demeaning conduct, corporate card misuse, hostile environment. Invoke clawback under the employment agreement, codify authorship policy, accurate credit for all contributors in releases and public mentions. The video director in the rectangle sighed. We've been waiting for a grown-up, he said. Evan stared at the page like it had teeth. I built this, he said softly. No, I said. You moved the people who built it. That's a job. It's not the only one. You'll kill momentum, he said. Fear finally replaced charm. He had believed the room. You'll kill the company if you train it to treat people like logos, I said. Momentum founded as humiliation runs fast until it hits the first wall of conscience. After that, it doesn't rise. We voted. The storm passed. Only one window broke. Evan's resignation was immediate. He tried to speak, then didn't. Sabrina's termination included severance contingent on cooperation, return of property, and a corrective public statement acknowledging harm. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Please, she said finally, the first true crack. I have rent. My parents think my job is... I'm not punishing your lineage, I said. You can work elsewhere. You won't work here until you understand that brands aren't masks. They're mirrors. Security waited outside, respectful, alert. As they walked Evan and Sabrina to collect their things, their faces shifted like weather. And for a moment, I saw them as kids who learned the wrong lesson too well. I didn't enjoy that. Mercy and boundaries can hold hands. People pretend they can't because it makes choosing harder. When the room was quiet, the COO sat across from me and finally exhaled. I couldn't have survived another quarter, she said. Thank you, I said. You think yourself. You kept the machine oiled in chaos. Glamour is a surface. Governance keeps the floor from collapsing. At the door, Tess stood like a student called to the principal's office. She saw me, saw the empty chairs, and frowned. Come, I said. In the hallway, she cracked, those tears people try to swallow and regret swallowing. I didn't want to cause trouble, she said. Frank said I was making noise. I said, you wrote the code. Noise is what people call the sound of their pride snapping. Who are you? She asked, a laugh hitch on fear. I'm still the coffee lady, I said, and the person who won't let anyone paste their name over your work again. We held an all hands that evening because silence tells a story that eats itself. I stood on the stage I hadn't been allowed to approach the night before, under the same lights, in the same shoes. Some of you know me as the coffee lady. I am that. I'm also a Harbor Light trustee. As of today, TrailPay has new leadership. We'll publish a code of conduct that speaks plainly. You will treat everyone with respect or you won't belong here. Authorship will be accurate, always. Frontline staff will be part of every celebration. We will keep our brand clean not by pushing people out of frame, but by letting decency show. A murmur crossed the room like wind changing its mind. Near the back, a janitor with a whistle on a string lifted his hand. I nodded. He said only, "Thank you," and lowered it, like the word had weight. In the weeks after, we wrote policy like a promise, not a punishment. We added an authorship line to every release note, boring on purpose. Contributors, Tess Brooks, primary. Frank Adler, review. Sana Romero, QA. We built a public credit page on our site where names moved weekly. Click a name, see a tiny story, what they love about building, where they're from, what they want to make next. We shot a team photo and put facilities and front desk in the center because floors don't polish themselves. We told PR to stop editing out aged hands. Tess moved from intern to junior to team lead in 6 months because merit, when not stolen, grows muscle. She wrote documentation with the clarity of rain. Her mother called me and cried the kind of tears you taste when rooms finally see your kid as fully human. At quarter end, I asked for the revenue line and the HR complaint chart. Revenue rose modestly, the way real lines do. HR complaints dropped, like a fever breaking. We stood in front of the wall where we'd hung the new code and read it out loud one afternoon, not because it changes hearts, but because sometimes a mouth must feel the shape of, we treat everyone with dignity. One evening, while the city practiced rain on the windows and the office hummed that kind hum machines make when they like their work, my phone rang. Unknown number. In this town, you pick up or you spend the night wondering. Hello? Ms. North, a careful voice said, like trying not to step on a sleeping cat. It's Sabrina. I know you don't want to hear from me. I'll be brief. I have a job. I'm glad. It's entry level, she said, bracing against the word. Retail floor. First day, I thought I'd die. People asked questions I didn't know. A woman returned a pair of shoes because the stitch popped. I started to say, not our brand's problem, and then realized it would be my hands that would fix it if it could be fixed. I didn't say it. I listened. She told me her mother repaired everything before throwing it out. I told her I had never repaired a thing. She laughed and said, "Start now." That's a good teacher, I said. I'm sorry, she said, the words like stones she'd been carrying. I was cruel. I treated people like props. I thought that's how you make a brand sharp, by removing anything that didn't look expensive. I was wrong. I want to apologize to the woman who poured coffee and to the woman who chaired the board. She's the same person, and I never saw her. I let the rain fill the space. Apology accepted, I said, because it was real and because I want to live in a city where people can learn. Some doors you can't go back through. Many others you can build with your own hands. I'm learning to use mine, she said.
Small laugh. The next morning, at a town hall, I told everyone what I'd written on an index card years ago. Respect first, branding later. A few people laughed. Then a quiet settled that felt like consent. A week later, TrailPay crossed 1 million users. Investors sent cheerful greed and emails. They congratulated me like I'd sprinkled luck on bread. I wrote polite thanks and then ordered pizza and brownies for the engineers, QA, and front desk. I poured coffee myself because I like the feel of a cup passing from one hand to another. Sometimes I still wear the white shirt and carry the airpot. I stand near the floral partition and watch new interns hover there without being told to move. Our new PR head, quick human, waves me into the shots. When someone looks confused, she says, "She's part of the story," which is almost as good as being part of the story, in fact. There was one more conversation before the city returned to its rhythm. Evan texted 3 weeks after resigning. "I'd like to meet." I picked a diner on 6th Street with plastic menus and the best griddle in a 2-mile radius. He showed up in a plain shirt and hair not yet grown into humility. "You didn't have to ruin me," he said, after we ordered, skipping to the part that hurt. He studied the sugar packets like they held answers. "I didn't ruin you," I said. "You built a bridge to yourself with money that wasn't yours. I removed the boards. You fell where you were walking. You could have warned me." "I did, in the code you signed, in the policy you ignored, and messages you dismissed as noise."
He looked up, suddenly young and old at the same time. I thought I had to be everything at once. I thought if someone else's name appeared under mine, investors would assume I didn't lead. I've been in rooms where men were punished for breathing wrong. I've been in rooms where women were punished for breathing at all, I said. Fear doesn't change truth. It changes posture. He laughed, short with edges. "What would you have me do now?" "Be good somewhere you don't run everything," I said. "Build something small with your own hands. Give credit like a habit. Then call me. I'll introduce you to someone who needs your speed attached to a compass." He nodded like a man who'd just heard a story he'd repeat in other words. When we parted, he paid cash and tipped well. He was kind to the kid with the tray. It's remarkable how fast people shift when the reward changes. As the year turned, we launched Everybody in the Frame. Any external media about us had to include at least one non-executive staffer in the first 5 photos. We added a line to event plans. No one calls anyone lower grade. The words irritated a few people. Good. Specificity is a kindness. Ambiguity is where bullies build nests. We started teaching Fridays. Anyone could teach anything. A cleaner showed us how to fix a cracked planter with white glue and patience. An engineer taught commit messages like letters to future strangers. The receptionist taught how to answer phones as if your whole face smiles. Tess taught tests that don't lie when you need friends. One afternoon, I watched a portrait session for facilities and front desk. The backdrop was cheap, the light was honest daylight. Art stood with his security badge. Ramona from the kitchen tucked dish gloves in her pocket. Hank from maintenance wore a crisp shirt. They faced the lens like people who'd watched cameras glide by their entire lives and had finally been invited to meet one. The photos came out like prayers, simple, attentive. We put them on our About page. Users wrote, "I like seeing the people," as if clarity were a feature we shipped. At night, when the building slept, I walked the halls with a small notebook
and wrote lines like a weather student. Power that doesn't treat people tenderly is a storm. Leadership that never changes is a statue with pigeons. Money that requires silence is a hostage situation. I keep the notebook in the pocket of my white shirt on purpose, to remember this didn't begin with a press release. It began with a woman carrying coffee and being told to stand behind the flowers. A year after that first board meeting, we threw a celebration that was smaller and more honest than the Series B party. We rented a community center in Bayview, new roof funded by our foundation, fresh paint, fans that finally worked, balloons, folding chairs. Kids demoed our tap-to-pay offline feature by pretending to buy oranges from each other. Paper banners read the words I love most. Welcome. Thank you. Eat. During Q&A, a boy in a shirt 2 sizes too big raised his hand. "Ma'am, why do you still pour coffee when you can make other people do it?" "Because someone poured for me," I said. And because pouring coffee is not a wound, it's a kind of love. When I hand you a cup, I'm saying, I see you. Sometimes that's what keeps us from becoming cruel. After the hall emptied and the last kid drifted out with the balloon bumping along like a red moon on a string, I folded 3 chairs so I'd remember how. At the door, Art saluted me with 2 fingers. The city smelled like rain, garlic, and something new taking root in wet soil.
On the nights when sleep is a stubborn door, I sit by the window and write letters I'll never send to my husband. I tell him Sabrina called to say she helped an older customer pick a holiday dress that made the woman cry because it had been so long since anyone listened without interrupting. I tell him Evan recommended a junior engineer for a grant that would send her to a conference and stood at the back while she presented, clapping before anyone else was brave enough to clap. I tell him Tess's first paper, her name alone on the top line like a small flag, now hangs at eye level in the lunchroom, so anyone lining up for coffee has to see it. I tell him that some evenings I still carry the air pot, and someone says, "Ma'am, please sit." And I do, and they pour for me. And for a moment, I'm not chair or trustee or invisible. I'm just a person being handed something warm by another person who wants me to hold it. That's the whole thing, I think, when the night is kind. We forget in our chase for ladders that most of the world is made of hands passing cups, names passing honor, windows passing light. If we remember for 5 minutes a day, the city changes. I wash my cup. I set my shirt to dry. I sleep. In the morning, the lobby guard nods, a bike courier whistles, a barista pulls a shot, and a dozen people hurry by with earbuds and plans. There are 100 ways to be important. The best is to be important to the person who needs you to be kind. People ask me in interviews or in hallways, what's the secret? They think I'll say growth hacks. I could, but it isn't a secret. Decide every morning what you will not do to another person to get where you're going. Put everybody in the frame. Count the hands that lifted the thing and write their names. Much later, we returned to the hall where it started. Bigger screens, brighter logo. We were launching offline payments for vendors who feel like ghosts when the signal drops. Food truck owners, flea market sellers, hair braiders, lawn crews. PR handed them lanyards and taught QR scans. Photographers took their pictures without asking anyone to step out of the light. Tess stood up front and explained the feature like she was telling a friend's story. I stood in back and listened to a company recognizing its reflection. That morning, Sabrina texted, "Thinking of you, good luck. Also, our shop's got mending kits on sale. Want one?" I told her I already had a needle and thread in my drawer. Evan sent a photo from a community data lab.
10 kids around a whiteboard. Marker scrawl. 1. Share credit. 2. Ask for help. 3. Be kind. 4. Snacks. When the room finally emptied and the floor smelled like spilled coffee and new beginnings, I picked up a crumpled napkin near the stage. Someone had written a number on it, crossed it out, then written again bigger. Respect first. I tucked it in my pocket. My desk has a drawer full of such things. Small, cheap, priceless. On my desk sits a little 3D printed plaque where my notebook used to be. It says, "Everybody in the frame." People roll their eyes when they don't need it. They reach for it when they do. That's how the world moves sometimes. A line becomes a bridge long enough for someone you'll never meet to cross. And yes, I still pour coffee. On purpose, with joy. If I come to your desk with a cup, I'm not asking you to admire me. I'm inviting you into a practice that saved a company, and quietly, a few souls. I hand you the cup. You say thank you, and the words feel like water you forgot you wanted. We look at each other like two people who decided for 1 minute not to be cruel. That's enough for that minute. Then the next minute comes, and we do it again.